podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Good job with the shot, and the Slough Jets have taken the lead on the power play. With 23 Russell with the shot for a goal. No need for the save from Lordo, and Ballard finds himself in, and it is 3-1 to the Chelsea Chieftains.
Hello and welcome to Zero Pucks Given, the UK Ice Hockey Podcast. We're in partnership with the Hockey Art Co. We're in partnership with Manscaped Male Grooming Products, and we're on the Sports Social Podcast Network. A really special episode this, episode 112. Absolutely delighted to welcome legendary sports commentator Bob Ballard. How you doing this evening, Bob?
Very good. Hope you're good too.
I am very well. In fact, my backdrop isn't quite as impressive as yours, but I do understand you are a few hundred yards from the real thing.
Yeah, I am. We're doing this just before England play against Finland, so I've no idea what's going to happen tonight. So hopefully when this actually goes out, England have won and we'll be feeling jubilant, but I'm not going to predict anything with England right now.
No, well, my first question would be then that you're not working tonight then. You're not commentating on that game.
No, I'm not. I haven't done football commentary much recently. My job now, my full-time job is actually as a lecturer at university. So that's what I do, teaching multimedia sports journalism, a bit of broadcast as well. And I've done that for almost exactly 5 years now. So that is my substantive job in addition to the things that I do outside of here. Really?
Is that quite challenging? Because you've got people like myself with no training whatsoever, sort of starting their own platforms and having their own opinions. Do you find it challenging then that people...
Yeah, I mean, to take up a lecturing job or a teaching job late in life was quite challenging. And I've got to say that when I first took it on, I wasn't really totally sure I'd done the right thing. I'm going, right, here I am with 30 people, 40 people, 50 people, 60 people, whatever it is, sitting in front of me going, right, educate me, tell me what I should be doing and how to do it. It's actually quite a daunting thing. Now I don't think anything about it because I've done it for quite a long time now, so it doesn't faze me in the way it did. But the first few weeks, certainly the first couple of months probably, I'm sitting there going, have I made the right move here? And now I feel I have. I think it's been vindicated and justified by the results I've got over 5 years. But it wasn't in my plans. It just so happened I saw this ad, went for the job, thought I'm not going to get it because I don't have this and I don't have that. And went through the list of things they were looking for. I didn't have all of them. I thought, well, somebody else is going to get somebody would be better than me at this job. But they came back to me and said, no, we want to offer it to you. So I went, okay, that's a bit of a life changer when you suddenly go in a completely different route, a completely different direction in your career, as I did in 2019.
Yeah, so we've was that similar then, standing in front of a group of people, as you say, saying educate me, to being behind the mic with no one else around you, but knowing there was a lot of ears listening?
Yeah, it's very, very different because the thing is, when you do commentary, whether it be ice hockey or the swimming or the diving, when I did 2012 Olympics, the diving we did, which involved Tom Daly, the figures we got for that was something like 17 million people watching that. I think it was the fifth or sixth highest rated of the Olympics that year in terms of, you cannot conceive, I cannot conceive 17 million people listening and watching me because it blows your mind, right? So you think of one person who might be the other end listening to what you're saying and watching what you say. You cannot possibly go, oh my God, I'm broadcasting to that many people. So you blot that out of your mind and you just go, right, I'm broadcasting to mate down the road or somebody I know or a diving aficionado I might know, that kind of stuff. You have to personalize it or else it would drive to distraction. You couldn't possibly conceive of that many people doing it.
I think I'm always just hoping that someone's listening.
Yeah, I mean, and if they're not, you still perform it the same way. It's what I've always said about when I've done smaller swimming events is whether it's an Olympics or World Championships or a Northeast Counties short course event, I still take it on board the same way. I still put the same emphasis in it because you're still broadcasting to an audience. And why should you downplay it? Why should you give them a lesser version of yourself because it's not as high profile an event? So I've always worked on the basis of you give it the same amount of gusto and the same amount of intensity regardless of what you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. So where did you get your start in broadcasting?
So I started at Radio Kent back in, my first professional job was Radio Kent in 1983. Well, actually, it was Radio Medway, then it very quickly became Radio Kent after that. But prior to that, I'd done hospital radio for quite a few years, so I kind of cut my teeth in hospital radio at Radio Hillingdon. And then I really wanted to make that big move. I worked in the record industry for about 5 years, which is kind of like a logical step for me to get into radio, because when I left school, there was a radio outlet for me. There was nothing that I could go straight into. And I thought, well, okay, so what are my other passions? But one of my other big passions is music. So I thought, yeah, they're kind of aligned. If I work in the music industry, I'll get to know people in radio, and then hopefully the transition will happen. And that's exactly what did happen. Is I was working for initially Lightning Records, and went to Iron Records, and I got to know people in radio through records. And one guy said to me, "You sound like you want to work in radio. You've got a good radio voice, blah, blah, blah." And I went, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Well, come down, have a look." And that person then eventually introduced me into Radio Medway. And that's where things kicked off from there, really.
Yeah, I mean, you still do a bit of music radio now, don't you, I believe?
I do program for 365 Radio, which is an internet radio station. It goes out on a Monday, which I really enjoy. I record that at home. It's a bit kind of what you might call Heath Robinson in the old days. You know, how it quite goes out, I don't know, but all the wires seem to work and all the equipment seems to work. So, yeah, it's a very different way of doing it from how I did it when I came into the business. But, you know, obviously these days you do a lot of things like that, like the obviously the podcast we're doing right now. It's all very much bolt and braces, and you kind of do with different technology. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I record it, and it goes out on a Monday, and, you know, the feedback's generally been very good.
Yeah, there's been a massive jump, really, in that kind of technology in the broadcasting industry. We were talking just before we came to air of me cutting reel to reel with a Stanley knife.
Yeah, that's how I started. You know, when I was at Radio Kent, and even lastly Radio Sheffield, when I went up there in the 90s, you know, it was still reel to reel tape. It was still the Chinograph. It was still the razor blade. It was still the leader tape. It was all that kind of stuff. You know, where we moved on in the last 30 years is immense. You know, that now you don't see that kind of stuff. It looks like something from the Ark, all that equipment. But I mean, when I went to do the interviews, both the ice hockey interviews and the football interviews at Radio Kent and Radio Sheffield, I used to have this massive, great reel-to-reel tape machine on my shoulder, and it weighed a ton. And you could only do 15 minutes of recording because that's all the reel tape would allow. Yeah. So you always have to take another one. So you have to spool it back off, and it was such a faff. And I mean, these days you go out with a SD card and you record hours and hours and hours of stuff. Then you could record 15 minutes, you know, and that literally was all you could do.
Yeah, it's quite a difference, isn't it? When did the sport really come into it? Because you said that you were covering a bit of sport for Radio Kent and also Radio Sheffield. I think ice hockey would have started in Sheffield, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, no, my ice hockey. I cut my ice hockey teeth in Gillingham with the Medway Bears, right? Because I'd been at Radio Kent for 2 years, I think, when the Bears started. The Bears started in '85. Medway Bears at the Gillingham Ice Bowl, as it was called in those days. And they came in at Division 2 level, as was. And I had an interest in ice hockey, having watched a bit on TV, because in the old days when Thames Television were going, they showed Streatham Redskins games occasionally. It's quite random. It'd be like a Wednesday night or something. They'd show highlights from a Streatham Redskins game. And I really got into it, but there was nowhere near to go and watch it. So there I am down in Kent, and they go, "Oh, we're launching the ice rink's opening, and we're going to have a team called the Medway Bears." So I got involved with that straight away, and they put quite a lot of money into it. So they got promoted the first season. They went through the playoffs, but they got promoted the first season. And at the end of the first season with the Medway Bears, the radio station said, "Well, should we do some commentary on this? Bob, are you up to doing it?" And I went, "Oh, hang on, I've never done ice hockey commentary before." So I was working with a guy who had done a bit of ice hockey commentary before, so we worked together. And after a while, it kind of worked, and I kind of felt comfortable with it. So I did that, and then we did quite a few of the games when they got promoted the next season and got to the playoffs again. So that's how I cut my teeth, was basically going home and away with the Medway Bears, reporting on them mostly, but also commentating on them occasionally.
Yeah, I mean, commentating on ice hockey, I know myself, is difficult to keep up with the pace and to sort of get your words out in the right order. But to do it on radio, where you're actually having to paint the pictures with the words, I mean, that must have been quite an incredible job.
Yeah, because it is very, very quick. I mean, obviously at that level, we're not talking NHL here, so it's not as quick. You've got a bit of time to, not sound like you're doing a horse race or doing something at an auction, because it'd be very easy on radio to sound like you're selling sheep at a cattle auction or cattle at a cattle auction. But yeah, you've got to try and get it right, because otherwise it's just a mass of words and nobody's following anything at all. So it's obviously descriptive about where the puck is, all that kind of stuff for people who don't know it. And it's quite interesting that when you hear American commentary, if you shut your eyes, they're actually doing radio commentary, because they say a lot, right? When I was growing up watching the ice hockey, it was Alan Weeks, then Barry Davis, who's one of the people that I look to emulate. But they would do what I call TV commentary on ice hockey. If you hear NHL, they'll go, the puck goes into the corner. And I go, yeah, I can see that. Why are you telling me that? I can see the puck's going, because I'm watching it on telly, right? But they'll feel the need to describe every single move as if it's radio. Now, in radio, you have to do that. So when I went, we're jumping ahead a bit here, but when I started doing TV commentary, I found myself falling into that trap of basically saying too much, because I've been so used to saying loads, and then radio, and then telly, you have to cut it right back, or you should cut it right back, because you are just adding to the pictures. You don't need to describe every single move, because people can see that thing.
Yeah. I think I fell into the trap myself on my first commentary thing at Ali Pali this year, where I was saying exactly what was going on in exactly what area, and in my head I could say to myself, people can see that.
Yeah, that's right. And say, but they do it in the NHL, and they've been doing it like that for years. And people in Canada would say, well, that's what we're used to. And I go, but shut your eyes. It's a radio commentary you're actually hearing. You're not hearing a telly-commentary, because a lot of stuff they're saying in commentary is stuff that you can visibly see. It's all about player identification. You don't need to know where the puck is on the ice, because you can see where the puck is on the ice.
Well, that could be half the problem.
The puck's in the crease. I can see the puck's in the crease. Why are you telling me that? Whereas on radio, that's what you've got to do, because people at home can't see it. So the puck's gone in the crease, or it's gone behind the back of the goal, or wherever it is. Then you have to say that. But in TV commentary, you don't have to do that.
Have you commentated on ice hockey in the Winter Olympics?
Yes, I'm trying to think how many I've done now. My first one was Nagano, 98. I did Salt Lake. Salt Lake was one of my favourites, actually. I've got an old VHS, which I need to transfer, actually, of the final. It's one of my favourite games ever. It was Canada-USA in Salt Lake. Terrific game, a lot of goals, the noise was phenomenal, as you might imagine. USA playing Canada in the USA. I couldn't do 2006, so I was ill. Did Vancouver, which is my last one for the BBC. I did 2014 for the Olympic Broadcast Service. I did 2018 for Eurosport. I did 2022 for Eurosport. And here's your world exclusive, is I will, fingers crossed, touching wood, be back on the roster for 2026.
With Eurosport?
Yes.
So we did mention this a little bit in our messages. We're sort of flickering around timescales here. You were working for Eurosport in the Summer Olympics just gone.
Yes.
But you were released.
I was.
For a comment.
Sounds like end of contract, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I heard it. I'm a man. I took no offence to it whatsoever. Most people took no offence to it whatsoever. There was a fair bit of outcry, actually, for the fact you were sacked for it. So I think now. I can't say, and I don't want to say too much, because I've had a really amicable, professional meeting with Eurosport in the last week or so, and I've done a mea culpa, and I've said, okay, the people obviously in charge were offended by it, or on behalf of other people are offended by it. I have to hold my hands up and go, okay, whatever I think, you're the people paying my salary. So we had a good chat. They're happy with me as a commentator for generally. And we have talked about me coming back for the Winter Olympics. It's not signed, sealed, and delivered yet. So this is kind of, it's not speculative, but we're closer to an agreement on that. So hopefully, if I keep my nose clean and I don't do anything silly in the next 16, 17 months, hopefully I'll be working on the Winter Olympics for 2026. That can be a challenge in itself in this day and age, can't it?
Indeed, it can.
Unfortunately, though, the Team GB will not be there in the Olympics. The men, anyway.
No, it's a real shame, and we're almost there. I mean, we've been obviously Pool A or Group A for a long time now. We're obviously out of it for a bit, but the fact is that we do punch above our weight. I think when you look at the available players that we've got within the British system, the fact that we've been so successful and in that top division regularly for the last decade. When I started covering GB, we're in Pool D. We're in the 4th tier. And then we worked our way to Pool C, and then we were in Pool B, and then we obviously got promoted in Eindhoven, that famous match in '93. But I saw us when we were up down amongst, we were playing New Zealand and people like that. And suddenly there we are in 2020s playing the big nations, the Canadas, the USAs, the Swedens, the Finlands. We're going, wow, considering that you look at the leagues, all right, we'll come on maybe to the Steelers in a moment in Sweden last week, but, there's no comparison with the amount of players there are in those countries and what we have at our disposal. I think it's remarkable that we've even made it to that level for that length of time.
Yeah, I think they're, and they were relatively unlucky as well in their failure to qualify, but the World Championships that happened earlier this year, where for a small period they were leading Canada by 1-0.
Yeah.
Something that will stay with British hockey fans.
Absolutely. And it was tremendous. And I watched some of that and obviously some of the other games as well. But the problem is, once you get into a World Championships or even the Olympic qualifying, like we just had, you are required to do that every 24 hours or 48 hours at most. And our players aren't used to that. They're not used to playing 3 games with that intensity in the space of 72 hours. So they're not surprisingly knackered. And obviously, when you're World Champions, you're playing 6 matches like that, or 7 matches potentially. The fact is that, they're playing once a week or maybe twice a week at most in the top level here. And then they go into expected to do almost twice as much without the depth. So that's why I think what we managed to achieve, or what has been achieved in this country from GB point of view, is phenomenal.
Do you think there's a sort of a common metaphor that goes with British ice hockey, that it's a snake eating its own tail? So if you look at our professional league, the Elite League, which obviously everyone that listens will know, is we don't cover the Elite League, we're 3rd tier. Yeah. But the import level is so high.
Yeah.
How on earth do we expect these young to be?
And this is the point. I know this is the bone of contention. It has been the bone of contention for a long, long time. I know that there are 2 schools of thought about this, and there's very deeply entrenched camps on this. Nothing pleases me more, and I'm sure the level you watch, is to see a Brit come through. I've seen the David Longstaffs come through, the Tony Hands come through, Nicky Chins come through over these. There's nothing better than seeing a Brit come through and be able to mix it with the imports and be as good as, sometimes better than the imports. But we don't put enough emphasis on that. We kind of go, oh, we can get that player off the shelf. Or here's a good player who's played 2nd tier, or it might be somebody who's in the NHL on their way out. Oh, we can pick them up. So whilst I understand the thought, but they could be inspirational for the younger players. You've got to give the younger players ice time. Once this raft of GB players have done their bit, and there's quite a few who are coming towards the end of their careers, where are the replacements? And we need to encourage that. Yeah, and I can give the example in Sheffield, where Ken Priestley, who was obviously won loads of Stanley Cups and with Pittsburgh, and was massively inspirational for the young players, and helped to bring through a really impressive roster of people after him. But then you don't get those kind of players every day of the week, or every year for that matter. You have to put more investment into the younger players, because that's what we need if we treat GB seriously.
Yeah, I think the investment has been a problem for a long time. The last time there was a large amount of sporting funding allocated, winter sports was drastically underfunded.
Yeah, but you've got, it's a chicken and egg situation for any sport in the Olympics or Winter Olympics, is you've got to make progress to get the funding. It's ridiculous. It's a case of, right, you've got to show potential. You've got to show that you can get to the Olympics. Right, once you've got to the Olympics, then we'll start giving you some money. But you've got to get there first. We're not going to fund you to try and get there. You've got to get there, and then we'll go, oh, great, Great Britain made the Olympics. Now we'll find some money for you. So you've got to get to that situation. So there's no point in saying, oh, we need money to get there. You're not going to get it. That's not how UK sport works. The funding has to be for somebody showing potential to be at something. If you show every time you can't get over that final hurdle, they're going to go, why are we giving you money then? And it's understandable because there's only so much of a pot, and there are 60, 70, 80 sports who will want money.
Yeah. So then it does really fall down to, as we said, the sort of the leagues and the structure of the sport itself.
Yeah.
To help bring on the young players to eventually, hopefully, qualify for them.
And how much do they care? I mean, they care about bums on seats because they are owners, they're businessmen. You know, whether Sheffield or Nottingham or Cardiff, all they ultimately care about is the product and getting bums on seats. Belfast being another case in point. You know, so ultimately, if they're getting results and they're making it to playoffs and then they're making it to finals, job done, right? If the side project is we brought through a few Brits along the way, great. But that's not the be-all and end-all from their point of view. Their thing is, do we fill 7,000, 8,000 seats? Do we get people in? Are they buying merchandise? Are they buying food and drink on the concourse? Yeah, I understand that because they're businessmen. You know, ice hockey will not run without loads of injection of cash. But from a fan's point of view, I want to be seeing players come through and go, I can re-identify with that player because he lives down the road, or he came through the junior program, or he came through the Pee-wee program, or whatever it might be. Whereas not just, oh, here comes an import, we'll see them for a year or two, then they'll go home and we'll see another import, and then we'll see another two imports who may invest in the club for the time they're there, but then they won't invest in it once they've gone because they're not really interested. They've moved on somewhere else.
Yeah, I think what we're actually seeing from a couple of especially the really young ones, England had quite a successful Quebec Pee-wee tournament a couple of years ago. And a couple of those players from that under-12 side are now at sort of college levels in America. And they've been offered scholarships or their parents are fortunate enough to have been able to put them through it. And we've thought, you know what, if this country can't bring our own players through, let's go and use another country's facility.
Yeah, but it's ice time. This is the other thing. Obviously with arenas, where does the ice time come? When do you get the ice time at arenas? Now, in Sheffield, it works so they've got the two pads and they've got Ice Sheffield next door, so they can train there and that kind of stuff. But very few setups are like that. In fact, no other setups are really like that. So it's kind of going back to the days when I was covering the Medway Bears. They were training at 11 o'clock at night.
It's still the case.
Yeah, because of the fact, and it's still the case at that level because obviously, again, coming back to the owners and the people who operate the rinks, they make more money out of public skating.
Yeah.
So they're not going to kill that golden goose to allow ice hockey players to cut up the ice. So it's going to be case, we make our money from this. Oh, by the way, we've got a couple of hours free. We can get you, 11 o'clock at night. You know, and you've got to be a real diehard, especially in the middle of winter, to be de-icing your car or getting somebody to take you to training and pick you up at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. You know, again, it's a really hard ask for people, and it's not surprising that we lose a lot by the wayside because they're not prepared to do that year in, year out. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it fits with the metaphor of the snake eating its own tail at times.
Yeah, and I'd love a situation where we had a load more rinks, right? We don't have anywhere near enough rinks in this country, whether that's Scotland, Wales, or England. We've obviously got Northern Ireland as well, but we don't have enough. And we obviously need more, but the investment to build a rink, the expense of a rink, just ain't going to happen for most. But obviously we've lost a few over the years. We've lost Bracknell and things like that. So we've lost some big rinks. We lost a 60-metre facility, the 60 by 30 facility in Bracknell. You know, Olympic size ice. We can't afford to lose those kind of size ice around the country.
No, and as you say, if they're going to reappear, it's going to have to be sort of private corporate funding rather than sort of UK sport outlet.
Exactly, and they're going to make their money mostly off public skating. So ice hockey's still at the back of the queue when it comes to the ice time.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks we have actually got Kev Parrish on, who's the owner of the Invicta Dynamos.
Because I know Kev.
Yeah, so
I know Kev very well because obviously we the Parrish family I know from my time with the Medway Bears.
Yeah, of course. So we'll be talking sort of ice hockey financing and stuff with Kev and how the rink all comes into run. Because we did have a little bit of an online discussion through some of our social media portals about ticket pricing, because it's not, I don't think it's quite as reasonable as everyone would like it to be. But as we've just discussed, the cost of actually running a rink is so high.
Yeah.
Whereas if we've got 20 men, 25 men on a roster and a couple of imports.
Well, you got that. You got to think about all the lighting, the heating, the Zamboni, the ice plant itself, which costs a lot of money to maintain and to keep running. So these overhead costs are big, and I get it. But I also think it's short-sighted. If you're trying to grow the sport and get people in, you have to sometimes take a bit of a hit on that and have to go, right, we want different people in, people who haven't seen the game before. So, right, we'll do half-price tickets or we'll do some giveaways just to get people in, because it's been proved that, all right, you might give 10 away and maybe 2 people will come back. But that's 2 people who weren't there before, right? So suddenly you're starting to grow that fan base. And if you do that, not every week, but on a reasonably regular basis, that 2 becomes 5, becomes 10, becomes 20. And then if, like you and me, you go to ice hockey and you're hooked for life, then suddenly they're coming back every week. So you've not lost anything on it. You gain from it because they're going to give you money. Money goes into your coffers every single week. So to me, it's always short-sighted to say, oh, we'll make the ticket price really expensive. But then you're going to put off the casual watcher who might just rock up. No, what are you doing? There's not much going on today. Just go watch the ice hockey. Yeah, if you make it reasonable for them or you do deals to get people involved in the first time, people will go and people will invariably enjoy it.
Mm. Yeah, we had quite an influx of new fans in the last few years, especially in the south, sort of third and second tiers, because we had the arrival of Petr Cech playing in goal.
Yes, yeah, remember that, yeah. Obviously, that then brings all the kind of publicity from a press and radio and TV point of view. Yeah. The former Chelsea keepers, what's all that about? You know, and suddenly you get that nice crossover where, you know, Chelsea fans suddenly go, well, that's what he's doing these days. And you need that, because otherwise, if you just work in what I call an ice hockey cocoon and everything's us talking to each other about the sport we love, what about all the others you're trying to bring in and you're trying to get other people interested in the sport? If we're just talking to ourselves, it becomes an echo chamber. That's all.
Yeah, I think, and it did do a great deal. There was a great deal of football fans that came in with very little knowledge of the game. They were hooked on the excitement and the speed of it. And in all honesty, Petr's actually quite good.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I mean, he played the game as he was growing up. So it wasn't like he would come in, oh, because I'm a goalie, I'll stop some skates, I'll be fine. He played the game when he was younger. He played football and he played hockey as he was growing up. So he was just kind of remembering his roots. But but you've just exactly underlined what I was saying. Chelsea football fans may not go every week, may only go 2 or 3 times a season, but suddenly they know about it. Suddenly they go, this is a good sport, isn't it? You know, it's probably more physical than we're used to, and suddenly they become associated with it or want to be associated with it, and you've suddenly got all these extra bums on seats, and you go, well, the cross-fertilisation of those 2 sports has worked really well.
It has, yeah. I mean, as we're talking about fans, we did sort of discuss that you haven't seen a great deal of ice hockey in the recent times.
Yeah.
But who is your team in this country?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question, because I suppose people would say, and I've got to be honest with this, I've got to say Sheffield Steelers, because of the time I spent in Sheffield. I was there 4.5 years. First time round, I went back for a year in 2006. So I was kind of there, not at the very beginning, but the end of the first season is when I went up to Sheffield. And I was so kind of associated with the club at the time I was there, because I did the radio commentaries and some TVs. I did if you ever get hold of the VHSs from that time, and you've got a machine you can play it on, all the kind of Steelers videos, they're all me. It's all me either doing commentary or doing the voiceover on them. So I was kind of Mr. Sheffield Steelers when it came to radio and television. So I'd have to say the Steelers, because I'm sure they'd kill me if I didn't say the Steelers, just from a kind of professional standpoint, because I worked with them so closely for so long. So they would be my team, which I know probably has turned off half the people watching this podcast now.
But is that where you met Nick Rothwell as well?
Yeah. That's how I got to go to know Nick, and obviously we remained friends ever since. But the great thing about the teams that we had up there were the likes of the Ken Priestley's and the Steve Nevis and Tony Hand and Nicky and David Longstaff, all these people who are still mates now. And we're talking about 30 years on. They're people who, I have conversations with. We do stuff on social media together, and that's a great thing about this sport. I think more than quite a few sports I've been involved in is the amount of people you still have as connections 20, 30 years on. Kevin McNaught, who was the coach and the player coach of the Medway Bears 40 years ago, pretty much, was on my timeline the other day. And I haven't seen Kev for a long time, but, we established a relationship back in the 80s, and we're still a firm connection these days.
No, did you have any involvement when the sort of British Super League was on the television here?
Yeah, I wasn't involved in it though, because obviously at that stage, because it went through all kinds of strange things. Obviously, we had the Heineken era initially, and then it went to what was the Elite League? I keep losing because we had about 3 or 4 different names for it at different times, didn't we? So I wasn't involved in the Sky stuff because I was working for the BBC. I was involved though. We did for about 2 seasons, might have been 3 seasons. We did a thing called Ice Wars, which was when cable television was kind of in its infancy. The cable company wanted ice hockey on there, so we did a weekly program. So I used to go to wherever it was. We did Murrayfield quite a lot. We did Sheffield a few times. We did Swindon. So I would go with a 3-camera team and record a game on a Saturday or Sunday, which then would go out. We do a highlights version of it, which went out on a Tuesday night, I think, and we do a roundup of all the other games as well. So it was like a magazine program. Went out for about 3 years on Wire TV, as it was in those days. It was great fun. We did all the games. So that was, I was doing that while I was working at Radio Sheffield. So I'd be doing Monday to Friday at Radio Sheffield, and then the weekend we'd go off and do a game, which then went out on Wire TV. So that was kind of the forerunner to what happened later on. We were kind of, in a way, the catalyst for what came later on. Yeah,
I think since obviously it all went tits up, really, is now the way we can describe it. That I think a lot of the broadcasting companies have been a little bit edgy with ice hockey, where we were talking before we came to air, it probably needs that impetus now of some sort of online or televisual media to get it out there to the masses. But I think a lot of people are kind of touching it with a hot poker, aren't they? Thinking,
yeah, but I mean, Premier Sport, to be fair to them, they've kept it going, and they've shown games, and they've obviously, when nobody else has been interested in it at all, have kept the fire stoked to a certain extent. But it needs a proper, you've got basketball on Sky Sports, you've got hockey on TNT, you've got field hockey days on TNT. I'm going, Howard. So you've got all these channels on Sky, you've got several channels on TNT, you've got DAZN now doing non-league football. You're going, hang on a second, there's a great product here for somebody who wants to do it. Why does nobody want to do it? And I don't really know why, because there's a big enough fan base. It's the biggest indoor sport in the UK.
It is, yes.
In terms of attendance, right? So you've got a ready-made attendance. You're not building up from scratch. You've already got that attendance there. You've got the fan base there. So surely one of the big names, and sorry to say Premier Sport, you're not one of the big names, though you are to set on football, should be going, we should be dipping our toe into this. We should be try and do some sort of deal. Now I know, maybe speaking slightly out of turn, that when Sky had the deal a few years back, ice hockey got a bit greedy in terms of what they wanted from Sky.
Yeah.
And Sky just went, okay, fine, we'll walk away. And they did, and they've never come back. And that's the annoying thing, is we did have a deal, pretty good deal, all right, for the elite ice hockey at the top level, but there was a deal there. But then there was just too many people making the wrong noises and demanding too much. And Sky kind of went, well, we got other sports. We can go to other sports. We don't need you. And they didn't, and they walked away. So to try and repair that damage now, different people in charge now. Sky's a very different organisation from what it was in those days. But somebody needs to be knocking on the door and showing the product and going, we think this would be good for you. And obviously you've got the women's game as well now, so you could say that as well. Women are getting better. So here's the women's game, here's the men's game. Somebody should take it on board. And that's not me because I'm an ice hockey lover and aficionado. I even from a broadcasting standpoint, I can see why that would work for a major broadcaster.
Yeah, it's certainly an entertaining product. And as you say, it's not like it's starting from scratch. It's actually built itself a reputation, especially over the last 20 years after the dissolvement of the BNL and the likes. So as you said there with the women, it's North America have gone professional in the last sort of 12 to 18 months with the PWHL. Just in the last couple of days, actually, they've announced the teams have actually got names and identities that they're going to work on now. Over this side of the pond, it's actually building quite fast. The Elite League is for the women is growing really fast. The playoff weekend is a phenomenal weekend that gets on. Have you done any commentary with the women's GBs?
No, I haven't done women's GB. I did when Nagano was the first time the women were involved at the Winter Olympics level, and obviously that has grown massively because. The problem with that was there was USA, there was Canada, then Sweden were okay and Finland were okay and nobody else was any good. No. So poor old Japan, who were in there because they were hosts, to be absolutely honest, barely could skate. And it was slightly embarrassing to have a big event where obviously the hosts were getting thrashed. But now, when you get to a Winter Olympics, there's so much more depth now. Obviously, the USA and Canada generally are the best, but Finland and Sweden are right in there. And other countries are starting to emerge as well because of Switzerland doing so well. The Swiss women are doing better now, all that kind of stuff. So now it's a great product. It was a great product at the top end in '98 and didn't have much depth. Now it's got a lot at the top end and quite a bit of depth. So that's obviously going to be a big growth area. And I actually can see... Sorry to say this, guys. I can see the GB women making the Olympics before the men do.
Yeah, I think it's something we've actually said on this podcast before because I think that they're being allowed to progress at a faster rate than the men are, and yeah. I can see them making it before the men. As we said, obviously the depth in the game isn't as large as the men, so that kind of evens it out, I suppose. But yeah, it would be a fantastic thing to see them get there, particularly to Milan for 20.
Yeah, I think 2030. Is with the progression we've got, I think 2030 is not out of reach for them. I think 2026 would be too early. 2030 though, given another 4 years, more progress, get a few more players, get everyone to treat it more seriously. The rinks are at the moment kind of a bit ambivalent about it. If they start to take it on board, then yeah, why not 2030?
Yeah, again, and they're doing fantastic things in this country where a lot of it is free entry to watch the women.
Yeah,
of them are investing in camera equipment to stream their games as well, to get it out there. We've actually got a sort of a sister podcast to Zero Pucks Given. We've got ZPG Ice Maidens, which is just solely focusing on the WNIHL. To get all
good luck. I mean, it's grown in leaps and bounds. Yeah, I know most women's sport in this country has done that, but particularly, I mean, I keep across and I'm looking and going and seeing the kind of growth we've had in the last 2 or 3 years and thinking, wow, that really is moving on a pace. And I just keep thinking, if it keeps going at that kind of rate, the next 4 or 5 years, they will be knocking on the door and making the Olympics. I'm absolutely certain of it.
Absolutely. So with your work as a whole then, you mentioned earlier that Salt Lake City was your favourite Winter Olympics. Have you got an absolute favourite moment from your sporting media career that you can pick out?
Yeah, I mean, overall?
Overall,
yeah. Cause, I mean, it's very hard not to say 2012 Olympics in London, right? It's my city. I grew up here. I never thought I'd see the Olympic Games on in my back garden or on my back step, and doing the Olympics and indeed the Paralympics in 2012 was, from a broadcasting standpoint, something I'll probably never better. Doing two of the biggest events in world sport in my city and broadcasting on national TV, it doesn't get much better than that. It just doesn't.
No, and I mean, obviously everyone listening to this is ice hockey fans. ice hockey is a pretty bonkers sport, but with your commentary on the Paralympics, you've probably done even more bonkers sport than ice hockey.
Well, the only time I've done are the swimming, and I did the wheelchair tennis. So the wheelchair tennis in 2016 and 2021. So yeah, so I started doing the swimming for radio in 2004. I did the swimming, and then 2008 I did it for telly for BBC Telly when BBC had it. And of course, Channel 4 got it in 2012, and I worked for the Channel 4 team 2012 and 2016. So, no, the 82 sports I've actually done at Winter Olympics level. I haven't done the para hockey yet, sledge hockey.
Yeah, that's quite incredible.
It is incredible, and I want to do some more of that because it's just, you talk about bonkers, that is bonkers. Yeah. But no, mainly swimming and wheelchair tennis. So reasonably straightforward sports, to be honest.
Well, I did watch a bit of the wheelchair tennis the other day, and that is the strength is phenomenal.
Well, they put me in a chair in Loughborough and said, right, I'm not a great tennis player, but I can hit a ball. And I said, right, okay, we're going to put you in a chair now. We'll give you a racket, and there's so many things, so many complications, so many moving parts of that. You've got to get the chair to move. You've got to hold on to a racket. You've got to try and hit the ball, and you've got to try and maneuver your way around and do all that. And I thought, it was like you have to separate your brain out to about 3 different places as well, right? So I've got a racket and I've got to hit the ball, but I've got to move the chair, and I've got to move the chair that way, and I've got to go backwards, and I've got to go forwards, and I can't go sideways, so I've got to go. Honestly, it just blows your mind. And when I see them playing it at the top level, the likes of Alfie Hewitt, for example, I see him manoeuvring that chair like it's a Formula One car, and I go, how the hell do you do that? Yeah. And even he can't explain it.
No, I suppose it's almost like a second nature to them.
Yeah, well, obviously by the time you're doing it for several years, as he has been, but I just look at her and say, he probably doesn't analyse it, he just does it. But to me, actually having to try and do it, and I did try and do it in Loughborough, and I just felt completely ill at ease and at odds with it because I could never coordinate the thing. If I've got the chair moving, I've forgotten about the racket. And then I forget about where to move, and then suddenly I had to go backwards. Well, how do I go backwards on this thing? It was. They went, not as easy as it looks. I never thought it was, but now I know how difficult it is.
It is. And having a go at that then from doing the commentary, have you ever had a go at ice hockey?
No, I've been on the ice. I've been on the ice. I have skated. I've public skated years ago, but I don't have a great coordination. This is why I never really got that good at any sport I tried. Is my coordination is terrible when it comes to whether it's cricket or football or tennis or whatever it might be. So I kind of think leave it to the people who know what they're doing rather than make a complete ass of myself. But I love seeing the elite to do it well. And a meeting, talking about career highlights, interviewing Wayne Gretzky twice, the likes of that. You get to interview arguably the greatest ice hockey player of all time. People might say Ovechkin is now the best ice hockey player of all time, but to me, because of the year I grew up, it had to be Gretzky, didn't it?
I think the stats will still agree with you on that.
But to sit there and talk to Gretzky. And his dad, who sadly is obviously no longer with us, but his dad was lovely, and the whole Gretzky family were lovely as well. So that's one of those moments you sit there and you're talking. I'm talking to Wayne Gretzky, greatest ice hockey player in the world, talking to me. And those kind of things really make a broadcasting career. Those are the things you remember. In my dotage, when I'm sitting in my bath chair, those are the kind of things I'll remember.
Yeah. Did you ever see the documentary about the Danbury Trashers? Because Wayne Gretzky's brother went and played for them briefly, didn't he? Yeah, well, because which Gretzky was it who came and played here for Ayr? Because one of the Gretzkys played over here, didn't he, for a while? I can't remember which one it was now. I can't remember. Yeah, one of the Gretzky, because that was the other thing. Obviously got loads of publicity. It's one of the Gretzky brothers. Again, I should remember which one it was, but he came over and played for Ayr Bruins for a while.
Yeah, and I have seen Slapshot, obviously, as everybody has, probably 3 times at least. But no, I haven't seen that film, or I haven't seen that documentary.
Oh, it's well worth watching. I am hoping. I did speak with the guy who's like the main focus of it earlier last year, with hopes to get him on. It was a crime family that bought an ice hockey team to launder money through it.
Oh, right, okay.
Signing all of the out-of-contract NHL enforcers. And they just went through the league beating everybody up. It was incredible.
That sounds like it's slightly based on Slapshot, then.
I think AJ Galante, who was the 17-year-old, his dad bought him the ice hockey team
right
to run, does sort of list Slapshot and Mighty Ducks as 2 of his massive
that would figure
in the game. So, yeah, no, that's definitely worth watching. Bob, I'm so pleased that you've spent your time with me. It's been a real honour.
It's been very enjoyable, thank you.
Your voice has been one that's been in my ears for many, many years, following all the sports across the BBC and TalkSport and Eurosport. So I've always been a follower of your career and a huge fan, and really pleased that you've come on.
No, really pleased to do it for you.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
A massive thank you to Bob Ballard for joining me on the podcast. Bob is one of the most legendary commentators in all of sort of TV and radio. If you've been listening to sports media over the last few years, you would have definitely heard his voice and his name. And me as a fan of it, I was absolutely honoured to have Bob for as long as we had him. As he did sort of reveal in there as well, he should be working on the Winter Olympics in Milan when that comes around. Obviously, after the issues that happened to the Summer Olympics, as he said, he's discussed it with Eurosport, and really, really glad that he's going to be back on there, because there's nothing like having someone really knowledgeable and really knowing what they're talking about doing the commentary, especially when it's on the TV as well, when you can see what's happening and they're just giving you those little extra details. So once again, yeah, really, really honoured to have Bob, and thank you so much for that. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really do hope you've enjoyed that chat. I certainly did. Next week, then, we'll have the roundup episode that will have all of the match reports and all of the coaches' thoughts and the results from all of the games this weekend. Everybody is in action on Saturday. We've got a full programme, 5 games Saturday. All of those match reports coming in next week's episode. And then next week, we have got Swindon Wildcats goalie Brett Massey. So we'll be discussing his move to Swindon, obviously, his time at Slough, how he became one of these crazy people that stands in front of pucks that go 100 miles an hour. And particularly, I do want to speak to him about, obviously, the playoff semi-finals last year, because he missed out on them, unfortunately. So hopefully we'll have a chat about that. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.